Hi there, how are you? Today I'm going to give you some ideas to prepare the speaking part 3 of the B2 first certificate in English from the Cambridge exams. This is the typical setting we have for the speaking part 3. In the first part of the speaking part 3, you have 2 minutes to talk about the topic with your colleague. As you can see, 2 people, 2 minutes. And you have to discuss the question using the ideas provided. These are the ideas provided. So you make sure you have a strategy in mind. Follow a simple structure. Here you've got 7 options, but you don't need to use all of them. Look, the first one, choose one option quickly. This is a must. Quickly agree or quickly disagree. Well, you can choose one or the other or do both or whatever. Skip. When are you going to skip? Well, a good situation to skip an item would be when you don't understand the word. You can skip the word. Move on. If you see that you are talking too much about the topic, move on to another topic. Hurry the discussion up. If you can see you are running out of time, you can hurry the discussion up. And interact with questions. This is a must. You don't only need to speak, you also need to invite the other person to speak. And this is really important for the interaction in the conversation. Well, I'm sure that there's no need to mention that when you are talking to your colleague, you should be as natural as possible. Then, besides that, I'm going to give you some examples of sentences that you can choose for each situation. For example, to choose one option quickly. So you can say, shall we start by this one? And then you point at one of these ideas. To quickly agree with someone, I agree with you, or me too, or me neither if it's a negative idea. Oh, that's a good point. If I want to disagree, I'm not convinced about that, or I see what you mean, but blah blah blah, or I'm not sure about that. If I want to skip one of these items, I'm not sure what I think about that one, so blah blah blah, let's move. Can we skip that one and go to the other one? These are ways to skip and move on. How about this one? Or what about this one? You need to point with your finger when you're using these expressions. Shall we move on to this one? These are ways to move on. And if you want to hurry the discussion up, we seem to be running out of time, so shall we rush through the last few? And remember to invite the other person to speak. How? Well, we are going to interact with questions. So we can keep talking and giving our point of view, but asking questions. What do you think about that? Do you agree? Do you see my point? What's your opinion? It's super important to invite the other person. Let's break down how to use each point with an example. So when I want to choose an option quickly, I can start like, shall I start by this one? And I can point here. The other person, yes, of course, go ahead. And I can continue. Right, so in my opinion, a first aid kit can be very helpful in case someone gets a broken arm. Now the other candidate can quickly disagree by using, well, actually, I'm not so sure about that. Do you think you would be able to fix a broken arm with a first aid kit? And now I can agree with his disagreement. Well, I'm not sure about that. Yes, I agree with you. And also, I can move on to another idea. So let's move on to the rope. And finally, I can interact with questions. what would you use a rope for in a campsite? That's my question. As you can see, I can interact, ask, agree, disagree, move on, skip very, very quickly. It can happen in seconds. And blah, blah, blah. All right, how could each item be useful on a camping trip? Shall I start? Yeah, why not? Go ahead. Right, so I'm going to choose the first aid kit. I think it can be very useful in case someone gets hurt, like someone gets a broken leg or a broken arm. Well, actually, I'm not so sure about that. Do you think you would be able to fix someone else's broken leg with the first aid kit? Well, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I agree with you. So let's move on to the rope. What would you use a rope for on a camping trip? Well, I think I would use it in case there was a windy day and my tent was flying away and I would like to fix it. Yeah, I agree with you. Right, so let's move on to the camping gas stove. That's a must. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. That's a must. We can use it to cook. We can use it to have coffee in the morning and prepare it. We can heat milk. Yes, that's a must. Well, so I suppose we agree on that. So let's move on to the torch. Do you think a torch can be useful on a camping trip? Sure, I do. I actually think it can be very useful when the lights go out and you want to look for something in the tent. Yes, I agree. And why not to play games at night? I adored that when I was a child. Yes, I also did. Well, what about the mobile phone? Well, the mobile phone is a good one if you want to take photos, talk to people, if you want to catch up with the information outside the holiday. Yes, I was going to say that. In the second part of the speaking part 3, you have 1 minute to reach an agreement with your colleague. Examiners usually ask, which is the best or which are the 2 best options from the ones that you previously discussed. So you have to listen carefully to their question. The examiner is probably going to ask you something similar to this. Now you have about 1 minute to decide which item would be the most useful one on a camping trip. Here are some ideas to see how to discuss this, to reach an agreement. And now we're going to see how important the second conditional can be when we are talking about which decision we are going to make. For example, I can say a mobile phone would be useful if blah blah blah. This is a typical second conditional. Another person can say, I agree, although we might not be able to use it in a remote place. So might not is another way to use the second conditional. Then we can keep on talking about the torch or whatever, and we might want to hurry up the conversation, so we can introduce this. Let's try to reach a decision. And if I want to talk about the torch, have we agreed that we should take a torch? Then the other person can still answer, unfortunately, I can't agree with you on that. And there's no problem, because we don't really need to reach the decision and find the right answer at the end of the exercise. They only need to see how we are trying to reach this decision. I hope this is easier to understand with the example. There we go. Now you have about 1 minute to decide which item would be the most useful one on a camping trip. Right, our mobile phone would be useful for contacting friends or family, and if we had any problems, we would be able to phone for help. Well, I agree. Although we might not be able to use a mobile phone if we were in a remote place. I think we would have to take a first aid kit because someone could get hurt in an accident. But this might not be the most important thing to take. Well, if we had a torch, it would make it much easier to do lots of things. For example, putting up the tent in the dark or things like that. I would agree with you about that. Right, so let's try to reach a decision. Do we agree that we should take a torch? Unfortunately, I can't agree with you on that. Well, I hope this has been useful for the speaking part 3. If you wish some more tips for speaking part 4, which is connected with speaking part 3, click here and you'll go straight ahead to the one corresponding to this video. Otherwise, thank you for subscribing and see you in Repaso de Inglés, Hábitos de Estudio, whenever you wish.